Volume 3, Book 4, Terror. Now that Carlyle has dealt with the demise of the Girondins, we are open to the Jacobin terror, at last, halfway through the year of 1793, though already on their new calendar. Already on the new French Revolutionary calendar, which would be formally adopted in September 1793, but retrograded back to having begun in September 1792. Nevertheless, we're in the June and July months of 1793. Let's keep it to the Roman calendar, so we may understand ourselves. Chapter 1, Charlotte Corday. Immediately we enter into one of the great moments of the Revolution that begins this terror. And it's again one of these female figures which finds themselves foisted into strange positions of clarity and symbology throughout the Revolution. In the last book we had Demoiselle Thirogne, always an advocate of the Revolution, but more from the Girondin side, from the scientific analytical side, realizing her own pack of dogs, where her own group of vehement female followers had outgrown her and were turning Jacobin. And so we had that episode where she breaks down, has a nervous breakdown in the Jardin des Tuileries and exits the scene. Here we have another woman, Charlotte Corday, who also gets wrapped up in the idea of visions and portents, but this time not to become a Jacobin, but to end the revolution. So we are in June and July, and the French departments germinate a set of rebellious paper leaves named proclamations, says Carlyle. And this is how the terror begins. Resolutions, journals, or diurnals of the Union of Resistance to Oppression. Among the proscribed Girondins are certain of a more desperate humour. Some, as Vergniaud, Valazé, Jansenet, are, quote, arrested in their own houses, close quote, or will await the stoical resignation what the issue may be. Some, like Brissot, Rabot, will take to flight to concealment. So the Girondins are broken up. Some will get arrested, and some will take flight. Others there are who will rush, like Bouzeau, Calvados, or far over France to Lyon, Toulon, Nantes, and elsewhither, and then rendezvous at Caen, and strike down the anarchic mountain faction. So sort of a get out of Paris to whichever city you have. We had Lyon, Nantes, these are strongholds of counter-revolution at this time, and then reconvene at Caen in Normandy, just on the outskirts of Paris, almost as if a place where you can plot your return to the capital that you've lost. So who is not yet arrested out of this Girondin faction? Well, a Bouzeau, a Barbaroux, a Louvet, a Guadet, a Pétion. They have escaped arrestment in their own homes. And they're not alone to the north in Caen, because it's Marseille, it seems, will march on Paris by itself if need be. Marseille is, of course, where Barbaroux originated from, so his support down there will do him a world of good. At Caen, in the early July days, there is a drumming and parading, a perorating and consulting, staff and army council club of Carabots, anti-Jacobin French friends of freedom, to denounce, above all, that atrocious Marat, Jean-Paul Marat, who they had accused in the last book, but he had got acquitted and heralded aloft of the Parisian crowd in triumph. La Vendée burns, Santerre can do nothing there. You may return home and brew beer. Cimmerian bombshells fly all along the north. That siege of Mons has become famed. Corday is capitulating to the Austrians. Royal Highness of York, these several weeks, fiercely batters Valenciennes. It's the Corday being in the northeast France, near the modern-day border of Belgium. Never was, says Carlyle, the Republic one and indivisible, at a lower ebb, amid which dim ferment of Caen and the world, history especially notices one thing. In the lobby of the mansion de l'Intendance, where there's busy deputies are coming and going, a young lady, with an aged valet taking grave, graceful leave of Deputy Barbaroux. She is of stately Norman figure, in her 25th year, of beautiful, still countenance, and her name is Charlotte Corday, heretofore styled Darman, while nobility still was. And Carlyle's getting that nod to her nobility of Darman from the Histoire Parlementaire. History will look fixedly at this point. This one fair apparition of a Charlotte Corday. It will note whither Charlotte moves, how little the life burns forth so radiant, then vanishes, swallowed of the night. We've always said these figures who come into the revolution have their one particular moment and then vanish again, are always a fascination to Carlyle. We think of the old dragoon Drouet, who was responsible for spotting the king's attempted flight to Varennes. We think of Stanislas Marie Maillard, who led the Women's March on Versailles way back in those autumn days of 1789. We see Charlotte on Tuesday, the 9th of July, seated in the calm diligence with a place for Paris. On Thursday, not long before noon, we are at the bridge of Neuilly. Here is Paris with 1,000 black domes. Charlotte demands a room, hastens to bed, sleeps all afternoon and night till the morning. On the morrow morning, she delivers her note to Desperey, her reputed reason for being in Paris. It relates to certain family papers which are in the Minister of the Interior's hand, which a nun at Caen, an old convent friend of Charlotte's, has need of, which Duperrey shall assist her in getting. This then was Charlotte's errand to Paris, or was it? She has finished this in the course of Friday, yet says nothing of returning. The convention, in bodily reality, she has seen. What the mountain is like. She's seen it in the flesh. The living physiognomy of Marat she could not see. He is sick at present, and confined to home. Ah, yes, dear reader, the citoyen Marat is ill and cannot be seen. Charlotte, returning to her inn, dispatches a short note to Marat, signifying that she is from Caen, the seat of rebellion. She desires earnestly to see him, and, quote, will put it in his power to do France a great service, close quote. It is a yellow July evening, we say, 13th of the month, and the eve of Bastille Day. 4 years. What a road he has travelled, has Marat. Sits now about 7:30 of the clock, stewing in slipper bath, sore, afflicted, ill of the revolution fever. Of what other malady his history had rather not name. There seems to be some sort of rumour that he was suffering from a venereal disease. Hark! Though there is a rap on the door, and a rap again. Musical woman's voice, refusing to be rejected. It is the citoyenne, who would do France a service. Marat, recognizing from within, cries, "Oh, admit her." And Charlotte Corday is admitted. What deputies are at Caen? Charlotte names some deputies. Their heads shall fall within a fortnight, croaks the eager people's friend Marat, clutching his tables to write. Yes, Barbaroux, Pétion, all the Girondins. He writes here with bare shrunk arm, turning aside in the bath. Pétion, Louvet, yes. Charlotte has drawn her knife from the sheath. She plunges it, with one sure stroke, into the writer's heart. Ah, moi. Cher me. Help, my dear. The last utterances. No more could the death-choked say or shriek. The helpful washerwoman running in. There is no friend of the people, or friend of the washerwoman left, but his life, with a groan, gushes out, indignant, to the shades below. To the shades below, of course, Carlyle there is echoing the Homeric idea of the Iliad, Book 4. And so Marat, people's friend, is ended. The lone Stylites has got hurled down suddenly from his pillar. Whitherward he that made him knows. And there we have the two aspects of Carlyle. And the death of Marat, he's trying to convey the Homeric idea of it, indignant to the shades below, with the biblical idea of the revolution, as a sort of biblical event. He that made him knows, being from Jeremiah. Chabot, pale with terror, declaring that they are to be all assassinated, made decree with the Pantheon, honours, public funeral, Mirabeau's dust, making way for him, Marat, and the Jacobin societies in lamenting oratory summing up his character, parallel him to one whom they think it honour they call the good Sans-Culotte, whom we name not here. And the good Sans-Culotte, interestingly, is a reference to Jesus Christ himself, and that's Barbaroux, and he says, Un rito patriot a compare Marat au fil de Marie. Also a chapel may be made for the urn that holds his heart, and the Place du Carrousel, and the newborn children be named Marat and Lago di Como, hawkers, baked mountains of stucco into unbeautified busts. David paints his picture, that's the famous Jacques-Louis David painting of the death of Marat, or the death scene, and such other apotheoses take place as the human genius in these circumstances can devise. But Marat returns no more to the light of the sun. Marat too had a brother, and natural affections. Ye children of men, they all come. Sister, yes, they say, lives still to this day in Paris. That would have been, of course, Carlyle writing in the 1830s. As for Charlotte Corday, her work is accomplished. The recompense of it is near and sure. She goes quickly to the Abbaye prison. She alone, quiet, all Paris sounding in wonder, in rage, in admiration round her. On Wednesday morning, the thronged Palais de Justice and Revolutionary Tribunal can see her face, beautiful, calm. She dates it with the 4th day of the preparation of peace. Tinville has his indictments and tape papers. The cutler of the Palais Royal will testify that he sold her the sheath knife. All these details are needless, interrupts Charlotte. And she says it there and then, it is I that killed Marat. By whose instigation? By no one's. What tempted you then? What? His crimes. I killed one man to save 100,000. A villain to save innocence, a savage wild beast to give repose to my country. I was a Republican before the Revolution. I never wanted energy. But the doom is death. She has the doom of a murderess. At the Place de la Révolution, the countenance of Charlotte wears the same still smile. In this manner, we have the beautifulest and squalidest come in collision and extinguish one another. So she is guillotined quickly and decisively. Jean-Paul Marat and Marie-Anne Charlotte Corday both suddenly are no more. 25 million hearts have got such a temper. This, says Carlyle, is the anarchy. The soul of it lies in this, whereof not peace can be the embodiment. This is the history of Charlotte Corday. Most definite, most complete, angelic, demonic, like a star. Adam Lux goes home, half delirious, to pour forth apotheosis of her, in paper and print, to propose that she have a statue with his inscriptions greater than Brutus. Of course, the allusion to Brutus taking down Caesar. Chapter 2. In Civil War. Charlotte, for the Girondins, dies at Paris today. Chalier, by the Girondins, dies at Lyon tomorrow. A royalist faction, so is the Chalier Carlyle speaks of. He is Joseph Chalier, French lawyer, again another advocate, revolutionary politician who was active in Lyon. So the Girondins don't like him. Royalist faction is waiting to strike in. Trouble enough at Lyon, the dominant party carrying it with a high hand. So Chalier was soon found guilty of Jacobinism and murderous plot. So if you're found guilty of Girondinism in Paris, you're doomed to death. If you're found guilty of Jacobinism in Lyon, likewise. This is the terror. Marseille is actually marching under the order of a Lyon Congress, is incarcerating patriots, the very royalists not showing a face, against which a General Carteau fights, though in small force, and with him an artillery major, one of the name Napoleon Bonaparte. We are in the Marseille harbour. We have the body of Rebequy, is found floating there. Toulon, likewise, is incarcerating patriots. Rebequy was a Girondin, found floating in the Marseille harbour. So they're trying to, the Parisian-style Jacobins are trying to win back Marseille. Meanwhile, they're getting sentenced to death for Jacobinism in Lyon. Montpellier, Bordeaux, Nantes, what of these other cities? Well, all France that is not under the swoop of Austria and Cimmeria seems rushing into madness and in suicidal ruin. So Carlyle seems to think this is the terror. It doesn't even matter, really, what city you are in. This is the suspicion. If you're in a city like Lyon, the suspicion will be you're doing Jacobinism and sentence you to death. If you're in the city that is under Jacobinism's way, there will be a suspicion that you are of the opposition and you will be sentenced to death. Convention commissioners whirl on all highways, burying olive branch and sword, or now perhaps sword only. This then is the fruit of your anti-anarchic Girondins. They have gotten from that levying of war in the Calvados. This fruit, we may say, and no other whatsoever. Men do what they want to do, and have immense irresolution and inertia. They obey him who has the symbols that claim obedience. Few wars, accordingly, were ever levied of a more insufficient character than this of the Calvados. National volunteers rush homeward faster than they came. One morning, we find placarded on our intendant's mansion the decree of convention which has cast us hors-la-loi into outlawry. Placarded our Caen magistrates, clear hint that we are also to vanish. Vanish indeed, but whitherward? So there's this debacle in the Calvados where Girondins are trying to have an insurrection. And the Calvados is the area surrounding Caen, right? It's their stronghold. But it's pathetic. And so they have to vanish again. Where to? To Bordeaux, cries the general voice of valour alike and of despair. Some flag of respectability still floats there, or is thought to float. Chapter 3. Retreat of the 11. It is one of the notablest retreats, this of the 11 Girondins, following the dissolution of their magistrate in Caen. The handful of forlorn legislators retreat there continually, and with shouldered firelock and well-filled cartridge box in the yellow autumn, long hundreds of miles between them and Bordeaux. Louvet has preserved the itinerary of it, a piece worth all the rest he has ever written. O virtuous Pétion, with thy early white head, O brave young Barbaro, has it come to this? Wary ways, worn shoes, light purse. Revolutionary committee, there in every township. They're of Jacobin temper. Gussie is tormented with gout. Buzot is too fat for marching. Riouf, blistered, bleeding, marches only on tiptoe. Barbaro limps with sprained ankle, yet every cheery full of hope and valour. They lie in straw lofts and woody brakes, rudest Pélas, on the floor of a secret friend is luxury. They are seized in the dead of night by Jacobin mares and tap of drum. They get off by firm countenance, rattle of muskets, ready wit. Of Bordeaux, through fiery La Vendée, and the long geographical spaces that remain, it were madness to think. If you can get to Quimper, on the sea-coast, and take shipping there, so halfway down, not even halfway down, through the Vendée, they realized this idea of getting to Bordeaux was nonsense. So head to Quimper in Brittany, way out west, get a ship there, and just sail down to Bordeaux. Thus in Cavaldos, all is dissipated. Rome is out of prison, meditating his calendar. Buzot's house is a heap of dust and demolition. Here dwelt the traitor Buzot, who conspired against the Republic, it reads. Revolutionary Committee. On the probing of the matter, he is evidently Deputy Brissot. Back to thy arrestment, poor Brissot, or indeed to straight confinement. Arrestment, business, in prison, and the Revolutionary Tribunal churns around in Paris. Also we find that in these last days of July, the famed siege of Mons is finished. The garrison to march out with honours of war, not to serve against the coalition for a year. It's interesting to note that Goethe assisted during this siege. Mons, as Carlyle is giving it there, it's actually Mainz on the Rhine. And it was in the Holy Roman Empire. What about the Corday? Well, the Corday fell some fortnight since. Cimmerian coalition. It presses on. Mother society, purged now by successive scrutinies or epurations from all taint of Girondism, has become a great authority. So they've pruned and cleaned, the Jacobins have, the mother society of Girondism. So that they become more direct institutions, less internal strife, clearer decision-making. The Jacobins' debates are reported in Le Moniteur like parliamentary ones. So the debates in the Mother Society have become purely Jacobin, even more so, even more distinct, because they've probably kicked out people who aren't even Girondins, but in their eyes they were too Girondinist leaning. And so the Jacobin debates basically become parliamentary debates. It has become the de facto seat of Parliament in Jacobin debating clubs. Chapter 4, O Nature. Looking more especially into the Paris city then. Praised by the heavens, a new Feast of Pikes, always around July years they have these Feast of Pikes celebrating the Revolution, the Bastille. Oh, it's a new constitution. It's one of the rapidest constitutions ever put together, made in some 8 days. The departmental deputies, we say, are come some time ago, Chaumet, very anxious about them, least Girondin, Monsieurs, and Anglo and Agio jobbers, or it were the fil de joie of a Girondin temper, corrupt their morals. So rushing a constitution before a Girondin temper corrupts the morals of the constitution. This is the level we are at with the revolution. 10th of August, immortal anniversary, a greater one than Bastille, July, is the day we've reached now for this feast. Hero lifts in an iron saucer water sprouted from the sacred breasts, drinks it with an eloquent pagan prayer beginning, O Nature, and all the departmental deputies drink. So they've abandoned the old Christian faiths now of these Jacobins. O Nature, they become almost pagan. This is why Carlyle calls them back to be Gauls. This is why he believes it's something primal. All the scientism of the Girondins, that analytical view of a constitution, is out the door. And the pagan underbelly, the nature against the celestial, is how Carlyle views it. Anyone who thinks they're in the scientific mold of scientism is a failure, because the nature has won out and paganism has won out. The celestial is getting disintegrated. That's all that's really occurred between 1789 and 1793, if you can crystallize it into one sentence. That's the Carlyle position. Next are processionings along the boulevards. Deputies or officials bound together by long indivisible tricolour riband. General members of the sovereign, walking pell-mell with pikes, with hammers, with tools, and ambient of their crafts, among which we notice a plough, an ancient Baucis and Philemon seated on it, drawn by their children. Now mark in the Place de Revolution what other august statue this may be, veiled in canvas, which swiftly we shear off by pulley and cord. It is the Statue of Liberty. She too is of plaster, hoping to become of metal. Stands where a tyrant Louis XV once stood. The old statue of Louis XV was of course once there, and was Place Louis XV, rather not the Place de la Revolution. Hercules Peuple, with uplifted all-conquering club, many-headed dragon of Girondin federalism rising from fetid marsh, needing new eloquence from Hero, fatherland's altar. This is really what the Feast of Pikes has become, in a way of embodying pagan altars, or fatherland's altars. There is a strange classicism to that, with statues honouring the likes of Hercules here, but it's Hercules Peuple, Hercules of the people, Hercules reimagined as a people's hero. It's not Rom's new calendar getting ready as well? On all housetops flicker little tricolour flags, their flagstaff a pike and liberty cap. Republic one and indivisible, liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. As to the new calendar, we may say, here rather than elsewhere, that speculative man have long been struck with the inequalities, incongruities of the old calendar. The old calendar itself, a calendar itself, is oppressive. You could say it's institutionally oppressive by the view of revolutionaries, and so we must be get gone with, as determined on Maréchal the atheist almost 10 years ago proposed a new calendar, free at least from superstition. We enter the first year of the Republic. So on the 5th of October 1793, after trouble enough, they bring forth this new republican calendar of theirs, 4 equal seasons, 12 equal months of 30 days each. This makes 360 days. 5 odd days remain to be disposed of. The 5 odd days we will make festivals. Name the 5 Sans-Culotte days. Or days without breaches. Festival of genius, festival of labour, of actions, reward, opinion. About the months, Vendemer, Brumaire, Frimaire, or as one might say in mixed English, Vintagerius, Fogarius, and Frosterius. These are our 3 autumn months, Nivos, Pluvios, Ventos, or say, snow us, rain us, wind us. They make their winter season, Germinal, Floreal, Plerial, or Budal, Floweral, Meadowal. These are the spring seasons, Massidor, Thermidor, Fructidor, that is to say, dor being Greek for gift, Rapidor, Reapidor, Heatidor, Fruitidor. You get the gist. This is the Republican summer. Adopt your decimal subdivision as well, we're not done yet. And instead of the world-old week, or sennight, make it a tenite, or decade. There are 3 decades, then, in each of the months, which is very regular. This, in brief, is the new calendar of Rome and the Convention, calculated by the meridian of Paris, Gospel of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The old style, that is called slave style. Style esclave. Chapter 5. Sword of Sharpness. Is not La Vendée still blazing, though, amidst all this? Alas, too literally, Rogue Rassignol burning the very corn mills. General Santerre could do nothing there. General Rassignol, in blind fury, often in liquor, can do less than nothing. Rebellion spreads. It grows of a matter. Carlyle seems to think here that La Vendée, rather than purely counter-revolutionary, is actually just an anarchy happening within the Republic because of a lack of grain and so on. It's the peasantry becoming more anarchic. What about Toulon? There is a famous Toulon attack in 1793. Toulon Arsenal, there flies a flag. Nay, not even the fleur-de-lis of Louis Pretender, there flies... Why, it's that accursed St. George's Cross of the English, and one Admiral Hood. Hood is fortifying himself, victualling himself. He means apparently to make a new Gibraltar of Toulon. Red sun blaze is this that has arisen over the Lyon city as well, the roofs of hapless Lyon and all its domes and steeples made momentarily clear. Rhone and Saône, streams flashing, suddenly visible. Worse things still are in store. Famine is in Lyon, and ruin, and fire. Lyon that contains in it subdued Jacobins, dominant Girondins, secret royalists. Emigrant d'Autichamp, in the name of the 2 pretender Royal Highnesses, is coming through Switzerland with help. Of course, Lyon not being too far from that Swiss border. Coming, not yet come, Précy hoists the fleur-de-lis. The last forlorn nucleus of Girondism. Deputies of Quimper, how do they fare in the West? Well, several have dissipated themselves, whithersoever they could. Poor Riouf fell into the talons of Revolutionary Committee in Paris prison. It's Carlyle now going over what happens to the last of the Girondins, their collapse, having been covered in the previous book. Respectability is driven underground, and Jacobinism lords it on high. Barbaroux and Pétion's fate, those 2, probably the most famous Girondins still without a loose end in terms of the narrative now, Carlyle will go into. From Réole landing place or Bic of Ambe, as it were, pale death waving its revolutionary sword of sharpness waves you elsewhither. So in subterranean ways, in friends' back closets and cellars, barn lofts and caves of Saint-Emilion and Libourne stave off cruel death. This is according to Louvet, but this is what he's talking about, that the Girondins, such as Barbaro and Pétion, are doing at the moment. Unhappiest of all senators. Chapter 6. Risen against tyrants. And here he'll teach the sort of scorched earth political policy that the Jacobins are trying. Against all which incalculable impediments, horrors and disasters, what can a Jacobin convention oppose? The uncalculating spirit of Jacobinism and sansculottic, formalistic frenzy. Our enemies press in on us, says Danton, but they shall not conquer us. We will burn France to the ashes rather. Nous brûlerons la France. So Danton, even seen to be not the most extreme form of Jacobinism, is still the firebrand, literally in this case, advocating scorched earth. Danton, though the organ of Barrère and Salut Public, gets decreed that there will be in Paris by law 2 meetings of section weekly, also that the poorer citizen be paid for attending. They're paying poorer citizens to try and attend, to try and coax them into thinking that the poorer citizen will actually mould themselves on the ideal that they have placed for them. We reached the 23rd of August, and the Committee of Public Salvation, as usual, through Barrère, had promulgated in words not unworthy of remembering their report, which is soon made into law, of Levée en masse. And the Republic is one vast besieged city. This becomes the mantra. 250 forges shall, in these days, be set up in the Luxembourg Garden and round the outer wall of the Tuileries, to make gun battles in sight of earth and heaven. Headlong, reckoning no cost or consequence, heeding no law or rule but that supreme law, salvation of the people. We have Merlin of Douai, named subsequently Merlin Suspect, comes about a week after with his world-famous Law of the Suspect, ordering all sections by the committees instantly to arrest all persons of suspect and explaining withal who the arrestable and suspect especially are. This is the law of the suspect, where basically if you suspect someone, they can immediately be tried or put in jail or incarcerated. And usually associated with Robespierre and the pinnacle of Jacobinism, but actually brought in 1793, before the nadir, by this Merlin of Douai. Neither hitherto has the Revolutionary Tribunal been keeping holiday. Blancheland for losing Santo Domingo, conspirators of Orleans for assassinating, for assaulting the sacred deputy Léonard Bourdon. These, with many nameless, to whom life was sweet, have died. So Carlyle just giving you some actual names to this terror. Actual names of victims of the terror. Daily the great guillotine has its due. And they were guilty against the Republic, and their death, were it only that their goods are confiscated, will be useful to the Republic. Vive la Republique! The guillotine. Yes, we find it there. It gets always a quicker motion as other things are quickening. The guillotine, by its speed of going, will give index of general velocity of the Republic. Carlyle here is twinning the speed of the execution through the guillotine with the actual speed of the revolution. And it's quicker and quicker loosening into mere anarchy. The clanking of its huge axe, rising and falling there in horrid systole, diastole, is portion of the whole enormous life movement and pulsation of the sansculottic system. Orleans conspirators and assaulters had to die in spite of much weeping and entreating, so sacred is the person of a deputy. Yet the sacred can become desecrated. Sacred can become desecrated. Your very deputy is not greater than the guillotine. Poor deputy journalist Gossin. We saw him hide at Rennes when the Calvados war burnt priming. Ex-Mayor Bailly is in prison. Once so noble Bailly of Paris. Ex-Procureur Manuel Brissot and our poor arrested Girondins have become incarcerated indicted Girondins. Yes, universal Jacobinism clamouring for their punishment. Duperret's seals are broken. Condorcet has vanished into the darkness, perhaps like Rabault, sits between two walls in the house of a friend. Condorcet, Rabault, all of these are Girondins who have now seen the revolution sweep up past them. Rabault now hiding between two walls. Similar, of course, to how people would have hidden in some other wars. Chapter 7. Marie Antoinette. Of course, there is a loose end in this royalty and this guillotining, isn't there? Well, on Monday, the 14th of October, 1793, a cause is pending in the Palais de Justice, in the new revolutionary court, such as these old stone walls never witnessed. It is the trial of Marie Antoinette, the once brightest of queens, now tarnished, defaced, forsaken. Fouquier-Tinville is at the judgment bar, answering for her life. Very witnessed summoned here are like ghosts, exculpatory, inculpatory. They themselves are all hovering over death and doom. So everyone who's gathered into this trial themselves will probably have their own trial, or maybe not even have such luck as having a trial in this terror. Count d'Estaing is one of these, anxious to show himself a patriot, but he cannot escape. Nobeli, who, when asked if he knows the accused, answered with a reverent inclination towards her, yes, I know, madame. And that's again from Montmaillard, this Bailey confession, that whether he knows Marie Antoinette, this is the absurdity of it. Ah oui, je connais, madame. Marie Antoinette, in this her utter abandonment and hour of extreme need, is not wanting to herself, the imperial woman, and Carlyle has always stayed consistent on that fact, that she is the imperial woman. Not so Louis XVI had his debilitating inability for action, but Marie Antoinette, in the eyes of Carlyle, has always stood for the Stoic imperialism. There is the blood of Marie-Thérèse in her. Nature refuses to answer such a charge as brought against a mother. I appeal to all the mothers that are here, she says. Robespierre, when he heard of it, broke out into something almost like a swearing at the brutish blockheadism of Hébert, on whose foul head his foul lie has recoiled. The result comes out, though, nevertheless. Sentence of death. I mean, this is the terror now. They're not going to stop and let Marie Antoinette escape. There are two processions, or royal progresses, 23 years apart, have often struck us with a strange feeling of contrast. The first is of a beautiful archduchess and dauphiness, quitting her mother's city at the age of 15, towards hopes such as no other daughter of Eve then had. Carlyle is bringing us back to when Marie Antoinette first came to France, 23 years prior. On the morrow, says Weber, an eyewitness of the first procession, the dauphiness left Vienna. The whole city crowded out. At first, with a sorrow with which was silent, she appeared. You saw her, sunk back into a carriage, her face bathed in tears, hiding her eyes, now with her handkerchief, now with her hands, several times putting out her head to see yet again this palace of her father's, whither she was to return no more. She motioned her regret, her gratitude to the good nation, which was crowding here to bid her farewell. Then arose not only tears, but piercing cries on all sides. It was an audible sound of wail in the streets and avenues of Vienna. The young imperial maiden of 15 has now become a worn, discrowned widow of 38, grey before her time. This is the last procession. And she was led to the place of execution in the same manner as an ordinary criminal, bound on a cart, accompanied by a constitutional priest in lay dress. On her countenance there was visible neither abashment nor pride, to the cries of Vive la République and down with tyranny. She mounted to the scaffold, with courage enough. At 12:15, her head fell. The executioner showed it to the people, amid universal, long-continued cries of Vive la République. And in the footnotes, these two dates, these two processions are confirmed for us. Marie Antoinette left Vienna for Paris to marry the future Louis XVI on the 21st of April, 1770. 23 years later, on 16th of October, 1793, she was brought to the Place de la Concorde to be guillotined. Chapter 8. The 22. Our poor arrested Girondin deputies now need to be dealt with in this final chapter of the terror. Our Vergniaud, our Brissot, our Fauché, our Valazé, and our Gensonnet. Fouquier-Tinville must give what account of them he can. Undoubtedly this trial of Girondins is the greatest that Fouquier has yet to do. 22. All chief Republicans, ranged in a line there, most eloquent in France, lawyers too. Remember, these Girondins largely still are of the advocacy class. not without friends in the auditory. Jacobinism and municipality rise to the aid of Fouquier. We're on the 28th of the month. Hébert and others come into the deputation to inform a patriot convention that the revolutionary tribunal is quite shackled by forms of law. So they have managed to carve into the legislature, into the body of France as best they can, these Girondins, enough law to try and save them. But of course the whole point that Carlyle's gathered at is that it has superseded them. They have not got a constitution to march, but rather it's been the mother societies and these on-the-ground, character-driven, frenzy fervorousness of the Jacobins that has won out. But nevertheless, the intricacies of the Girondins has given them some time. 10 o'clock on the night of the 30th of October, the 22 summoned back once more to receive this information. The accused are found guilty, and the sentence on them, one and all, is death. Confiscation of goods. Of course, the confiscation of goods is necessary because everything must be brought in defence of the country, which is the revolution, embodied now. La Source is exclaiming, "I die on the day when the people have lost their reason. Ye will die when they recover it. The doomed uplift the hymn of the Marseillaise, return singing to their dungeon." La Source there, the Girondin, is quoting Plutarch. And it is typical that he will go for this classical ideal. That is how they viewed the ancients, these Girondins, when they enacted the revolution. That they inhabited, the likes of Plutarch, a sort of perfect, reasoned debate stripped of the Catholicism. Remember, they were sweeping up in the wake of a Voltairean skepticism of Christianity and of the whole monarchical system, and they saw in the ancients the reason that they wanted to instill themselves. But of course, the ancients only seem calm and disposed. The words of Plutarch seem enlightened because we have only the calm words left, and we read them in times of inward reverie. But when it comes to actual action, it is the frenzy of the Jacobins that has won out. It's an interesting choice of quotation that La Source has gone for there. The Girondins make their last supper. Valazé, with bloody breast, sleeps cold in death, hears not the singing. The death carts Valazé's cold corpse, dies before he's executed, basically, frozen stiff, probably hunger. Stretched among yet the 21 are still living, they roll along, their shouts of Vive la République, some of them answering with counter-shouts of Vive la République. I mean, this is the absurdity. Others, as Brissot, sit sunk in silence at the foot of the scaffold. They again strike up with appropriate variations of the hymn of Marseillaise. The chorus is wearing weak, though. The chorus is worn out. Well, farewell forevermore, ye Girondins. Te Deum Fauché has become silent. Valazé's dead head is lopped. So they still execute, but via guillotine, a dead man already, Valazé. The sickle of the guillotine has reaped the Girondins all away. Louvet went with Corday, and Salle and Valady. Barbaro with Buzot and Pétion. Valady soon went southward on a way of his own. These are the ones who managed to escape. Poor Corday and Salle were both taken ere long. They died by guillotine in Bordeaux. Barbaro and his two comrades weathered it longer, into the summer of 1794, but not long enough. One July morning, changing their hiding place, as they have often to do, about a league from Saint-Emilion, they observe a great crowd of country people, doubtless Jacobins, come to take them. Well, Barbaro draws a pistol, shoots himself in the head. Alas, it was not Jacobins, it was a harmless villager, and villagers going to the village wake. 2 days after, Buzot and Pétion were found in a cornfield, their bodies half eaten by dogs. Such was the end of Girondism. They arose to regenerate France, these men, and have accomplished this. Whatever quarrel we had with them, has not that cruel fate abolished it? Pity only survives. Many excellent souls of heroes are sent down to Hades. Carlyle does not dismiss their souls of all of these 22 and beyond, Barbaro and those who were not in the 22 who got executed. There are great souls in there. Carlyle's not saying they're absent of it. It was merely the fault at their kernel of belief and their understanding of revolutions. That means that they will not be the ultimate victorious side. They will not be the side to cement again in France the order they envisage. Does not mean their souls are without admirability. As Vergniaud said, the revolution, like Saturn, it is devouring its own children.